Let me get to this, first of all, in the update from the border situation on the coast, on the border, on the southern border. I had this from Fox News, just kind of launches into this one because it gives a good review, Congressman, on what is going on. And what could happen. Here we go.
Preparing time, officials at the southern border are preparing for a swell of migrants in a few days when the CDC's COVID policy allowing border agents to quickly deport most migrants is set to expire. William Lajeunesse live with us right here in Los Angeles. William.
Well, so even some Democrats are expecting chaos on Wednesday if the Biden administration lifts Title 42. Right now, the Border Patrol is apprehending a near record 7,000 migrants a day. Later this week, I am told that could approach 18,000 or 750 migrants entering illegally every hour, which sources say the U.S. is not prepared for.
We're completely being overwhelmed. There's already sections of border that aren't being patrolled today, and that's going to be even more so in April.
Now, most Republicans agree with that, but not Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, who is demanding an end to the policy because it denies thousands of mostly Latino migrants asylum. Instead of 1 million migrants being turned back as they were last year under Title 42, they would be released into the U.S. Even though fewer than 10% actually qualify for asylum, once here, 75% never leave.
Meantime, you have President Biden saying they're going to have 100,000 Ukrainian refugees come in. We're still trying to process Afghanistan refugees coming in and this disaster happening at the border.
And then at the same time, Congressman, you have people at the CDC warning about this COVID variant, the Omicron variant out there. So it just doesn't make sense. But what do you hear, and what are we doing about the border?
Well, I tell you that the Biden administration has either been unwilling or unable to secure our southwest border. And the numbers that you're receiving are the same numbers that we're hearing here. Because of Title 42, that is the only thing that has really stopped the tsunami of immigrants that we are expecting to see once Title 42 ends. We've seen those numbers deteriorate month after month. They dropped a little bit during the winter season, but really they're at an all-time high. Last year, we set a record number of immigrants that were stopped and detained at the southwest border. This year, we're on record to break that. The first 6 months in the fiscal year, over 1 million immigrants were stopped coming across the border, and that was with Title 42 in place. As some of the clips that you just played, once Title 42 is removed, we're going to see those numbers go up 2 to 3 times what we are seeing now. And we are not prepared to deal with that situation. The administration has not put a plan in place to deal with immigrants coming across the border and how we are going to, one, prevent them, and then those few that are legally have a right to claim asylum, how we're going to quickly process those asylum claims.
What is tremendously frustrating, and I know you guys are, and there are people who are frustrated at you, but the reality in politics is you're just, I'm not going to say you're neutered, but at this particular time, unless you have the power of the majority, there's not a whole hell of a lot of stuff you can do. Just wait. You can cry about it. You can proclaim about it. You can protest about it. But unless you have the gavel, there's not a lot of things you can do. But then again, if that happens at the midterms, with him still in office, what would the House going back to Republican leadership and the Senate mean as far as the border control? What could you guys do with the power of the House and Senate?
So, first we could pass legislation that would put in place the Remain in Mexico policy. That was a policy established.
Yeah, but he could veto that. I mean, he wouldn't have to sign that, though, would he?
Well, he wouldn't. No, we could pass the legislation. We could send it to the president's desk. He could veto that legislation. We could also continue to have hearings and point out to the American public the fact that this president is just not enforcing the law. And clearly, that's what we've seen, that there are measures that currently exist today that this administration could use, but because of the pressure from the extreme left, they're not enforcing the law. And so what we have to do is we have to hold people like Secretary Mayorkas responsible. We have to bring him before Congress. We have to question him. And then if he is still refusing to do his job, I think that we have to look at taking steps to possibly remove him and make sure that he is replaced by someone who is going to follow the law. And that's all we're asking. We're not asking them to do anything but just enforce the laws that currently exist and hope that we can strengthen those laws to protect our southern border.
It's going to be a long 2 years remaining in this term, regardless of if he stays in office or even if Kamala Harris steps in. Who knows what would happen then. On the other front here, it was some disturbing news that the administration is considering releasing up to 180 million barrels of oil, doing this over the next several months from the Strategic Petroleum Reserves, which is a spit in the bucket, to be honest, but it does take from our reserves in case of a crisis, and we have to have it. 4 U.S. sources said yesterday as the White House tries to lower fuel prices. But the problem is, Congressman, he's trying to lower fuel prices by shopping in Argentina or Venezuela or Iran, Iraq, and even in Russia. I don't understand most of the story. The latest amount of U.S. oil release being considered, which is equivalent to about 2 days of global demand, would mark the third time that we have tapped into the strategic reserves in the past 6 months. It hasn't had any relief at all. And this is akin to your financial advisor demanding that you change your full-time job to a part-time job so you can have more relaxation with the family and then draw off of your retirement fund. It's stupid.
You know, clearly it's a political move. Clearly it's designed so that he can show the American public that he is doing something. But the effects you spoke of will be very minimal and will very quickly fade away. If the president really wants to do something about lowering gas prices, lowering the price that all Americans are paying at the pump. In Mississippi, it's $4 for regular, $5 for diesel. It's much more than that in other parts of the country. He would open up federal lands to drilling. He would relook at some of the pipelines that his administration has kept bottled up, not only Keystone XL, but others. There are ways in which we can once again become an energy independent nation like we were under President Donald Trump. But under this president, we've become dependent upon Russia, upon the Middle East. You talk about Venezuela. We have become dependent upon people who hate America to supply our energy needs. And energy independence is something that we must return to because energy security relates to national security.
Do you know for sure, because the end of the story, again, is a little bit complex, sanctions and reluctance to purchase Russian oil could remove about 3 million barrels per day of Russian oil from the market starting in April, said the IEA. Well, does that mean 3 million barrels a day in this country? Because we were told that all we got from Russia was 650,000 barrels a day, and that we'd stop that. Russia exports, it says here, 4 to 5 million BPDs or barrels per day. Supply concerns drove up benchmark Brent crude futures to about $139 a barrel this month, the highest since 2008. Do you have any idea as a congressman, are we or are we not getting, at this moment, oil from Russia?
At this point, you know, prior to the invasion, we were getting somewhere between 650 and 750,000 barrels a day. We have worked to reduce that. I don't know the number that we're receiving today, but that number is somewhat far less than that 750 number that we were receiving before the invasion began.
So what you're saying is we are still, as America, buying oil from Russia to supplant ours. Amazing. There was
a 60-day window for us to be able to wean ourselves off, and I'm not exactly sure where we are in that process.
We'll have more coming up with Michael Guest right after this. Hang on. I want to pronounce it. Back with Michael Guest, Congressman from District 3. And you'll love this story, Congressman. The Army this week admitted it was having problems recruiting, and they announced an unprecedented reduction in the numbers that would shrink the active duty Army to the smallest size since World War II in the scope of everything that's going on in world politics. We're facing, obviously, some challenging conditions in terms of our ability to recruit and attract talent. Under Secretary Army Gabe Camarillo said at a press conference that he held this week. We are less than we need in the Army, so instead of solving that, they're just decreasing the number of soldiers we have. Your thoughts on that?
And a very stupid, short-sighted decision, Paula. You're exactly right. You know, in a time geopolitically, when we look at the things that are going on across the globe, we need to have the strongest military that we can. And that military is run by the men and women who serve. We've got some great things as far as technology that provide for force multipliers and make our troops truly effective. But we've got war in the Ukraine. We've got China, which is set its sights on invading Taiwan at some point. And we really have unrest across this globe. Now is the time for us to be increasing our military. And if that requires increasing pay, increasing benefits, making the military more attractive to our young men and women who are exiting high school, exiting college to go into military, that's what we should be doing to build our numbers up. We should not be decreasing the numbers because the current military is unable to properly recruit the numbers that they need.
I think most people, you would have to believe, even if, let's take it on a local level, if it's the local police department and the city council is arguing in a high crime rate area where they don't have a police chief, there's no direction, and they're arguing about the fact that they really need a transgender chief. I think most people in that town would be irate on this one, and I think most people in America understand that this is crazy. When the Democrats take over, immediately they go into social experimentation, and much like Ray Mabus and Barack Obama did for the Navy, and that continues. But this has got to stop. He said the Army decided on reducing its recruitment goals instead of lowering their standards. So there you are.
Well, and you're
else?
exactly right.
Go ahead.
Probably some of the reasons people don't want to join the military is at times it's become a social experiment. You know, the people that want to join the military are patriotic people who want to go, they want to serve, they want to fight, they want to protect this country, and they don't want to be indoctrined by this administration on all sorts of different social issues. They want to be able to be the best trained fighting force in the world, and we've gotten away from that. We've made the military in some aspects a social experiment. And that's wrong. And then they wonder why their recruitment numbers are down, why people don't want to serve in the military. It's not because we no longer have patriotic young men and women. It's what this administration has turned our armed forces into.
Let me ask you this and a couple of other questions, and we'll let you go. But Washington is not a fun place to be when you're not in power. Is that something you found out?
You're exactly right. You know, it is very frustrating to be in the minority, particularly this Congress, because not only do we not control the House of Representatives, Republicans don't control the Senate, and we don't control the White House. At least under the prior Congress, even though we were in the minority in the House, Republicans controlled the White House, controlled the Senate, and you had divided government. And so what the hope is of all Republicans that I've spoke to is that we have a very good November. With midterms coming, the headwinds that the Democratic Party is facing, we know that there are record high gas prices. We see inflation rising to the worst level in almost 50 years, supply chain issues. We see the rise of crime. We see what's happening on the border. What we hope is that Americans across the country are looking at what the Democrats have done when they have complete control of government, and that they're going to go to the polls in November and they're going to elect conservative Republicans so that we can begin making a change. We can begin challenging the administration. Yeah. We can stop bad legislation from coming through Congress, and we can hold the administration accountable through our oversight component.
Which is probably up on the top of the list there, because these hearings, like Nadler and the rest of these people have had, is just unbelievable, constantly for political reasons. And like the January 6th siege on the Capitol, we really haven't gotten to the bottom of this on who may have done that and who the real culprits are. But that for another show. Look, I thank you so very, very much. Is your campaign underway? I mean, is everything okay?
We have a primary June 7th and then general election in November. So we're continuing to work hard, continuing to let people know that, hey, we're here. We're in Washington, D.C. We're fighting for Mississippi conservative values. And that when we're up here, to let them know that we are doing everything that we can to keep this administration in check. And we're looking forward to hopefully having the opportunity in November for moving to defense to offense. And that's what I'm telling everyone back home. Remain patient. Don't get frustrated. Go to the polls, vote for your Republican candidates, and we will see a change in Washington, D.C. in November.
And I think the only thing the people back home are saying to you and the rest of the GOP, don't take the midterms for granted. Practice, practice, practice. When the game comes for November, make sure you guys are ready. And I just using a sports analogy, and I think that's what most of the people are saying. And from what I hear, the GOP is not. They're working hard on this one. Congressman Michael Guest, thank you, sir. Appreciate it very much.
Yeah, and Paul, we just would encourage you to remind everybody to please go out and vote. As we get closer to these elections, people have died to give us the right to elect our leaders. It's very frustrating when you see low voter turnout, and so we've got to continually to remind people, hey, this is your civic duty. Please go do your civic duty. Please vote for your elected officials.
Got it. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it very much.